You're watching vlog number 26, and today's topic is, do middle schoolers need lockers? So today's topic is middle schoolers and lockers. This is a topic we've talked about a little bit in our own school, and then about a week ago, I saw a tweet about an article in the Charlotte Observer newspaper talking about how some middle schools that are currently being built are being built without lockers for each student. So I thought we'd talk about it a little bit. I've been visiting with my students in class, and then I also have some examples of some ways that we have utilized some space in our hallways here at DMS a little bit differently since we went one-to-one about 4 years ago, and how we're using space in our hallways. The genesis for this vlog post was reading that Charlotte Observer newspaper article. I have the link for that on our show notes. That's at historygeekteacher.com. It was published on March 24th, so fairly recent, and they do a good job of giving a lot of different perspectives. So they don't really talk about it's a good thing or bad thing. They just mention that quite a few middle schools that are currently being built are being built without a locker for each student, or in some cases, very few lockers. So we've talked about this in our own building. There's some spaces that we'd like to maybe utilize a little bit more in the hallways for some collaborative areas. And we have found that a lot of our students don't really use their lockers much at all. Kind of a light bulb moment for me was last spring. We have one day where we kind of have everybody in certain time periods go out, clean out their lockers, and we've got trash cans and we've got all these areas where they just throw away the stuff, and then they close their locker up for the year. We double check, make sure there's no damage. And we have students from year to year that do not know their combination in May because they have not used their locker for the entire year. So we have to go to counseling and check on the combination. So I've been talking about this topic with my students, and it's interesting. I would say probably around 25% of the students would like to have a locker, and quite a few students do not. Now, I will note that we are a one-to-one school. We've been one-to-one for about 4 years, and I do think that makes a big difference. When you have all of those textbooks and you kind of eliminate that as things that you need to store, I think that your need for a locker definitely goes down. One of the questions I had as a teacher and as a parent, quite frankly, is what happens in the wintertime when students have big, bulky winter coats, for example. We're in Missouri, but we definitely have cold weather. So if you don't have a locker to put your coat in, what are you going to do with your coat? And so students suggested that we maybe have just an area in a homeroom or even in each individual class where you have like a little hook and students can hang their coats if they want to. So that was one solution that students had. But I would say overall, students would be pretty okay with not having a locker. They put stuff in their book bag. Now, I will say we do not allow book bags currently during the day in the classroom. So that would be one exception or kind of change in the rules we'd have to make. Students would need to be able to bring that book bag into each class. That might be a little bit of a space issue. If we have 30 students in a classroom and everybody's bringing a backpack, we might need to kind of arrange a little bit and kind of figure out a system so that we're not taking up a ton of floor space and having students trip over them and all that kind of stuff. But it's definitely an interesting discussion to imagine if we don't need lockers, what can we use that space in the hallways for instead of student lockers? So if students are not using their lockers, there are some creative ways you could use those spaces in the hallways to create areas where students can collaborate and potentially work on projects outside of the classroom. Now, it's not unusual for us to go through the hallways in our class during periods and seeing quite a few students working on projects in the hall. Now, we had this before we went one-to-one. Every once in a while, you'd see a student with a textbook or a book, or maybe they were working on a project. But you see it a lot more now that they're mobile with their one-to-one devices. And we try to utilize as much space as possible throughout our building. So I took a couple videos here showing a little bit of what we have available as far as hallway space. This first hallway space is an area where we have a green screen set up. And then we also recently put a stand-up desk on the wall. So when you walk by during the day, you'll typically see a student maybe filming a video project for a class. We use it in our broadcasting class quite a bit. And then also you'll see students at this stand-up desk. We would like to get a little kind of charging station below it possibly in the future, but there's a potential of having some areas where students could have stand-up desks in the hallways if there weren't lockers on that wall. So in this particular area, there are lockers on one side of the hallway, and the other side we use for different things like the green screen or the stand-up desk. So potentially you could have a little bit of both, maybe eliminate some of the desks, but still use one side for some of those other creative uses. The second hallway in our building is one that we've talked a little bit about potentially changing for next year. So this is a hallway that has lockers on both sides, and we have a nice window and door on one side. So we've talked about potentially eliminating the lockers on both sides of the wall here. That would allow us to potentially have a screen on one side. You could put a white board type of thing, some kind of collaborative area. If you wanted to, if you took lockers out on one side, you could maybe put a couple booths in, or some different couches, or maybe some areas where students can sit and read. And then you could also have furniture in the middle of this area. So this is currently a space that we do not have any collaborative furniture in, but we do have students gravitate to this space quite a bit when they're working in class, because it's kind of off of the main beaten path of our hallway. And then it's also got this really nice light coming through for a majority of the day. So if we did eliminate at least some of our student lockers, this would be a great collaborative space that our students would utilize during the day. Those are a couple examples from our school. What I'd like to hear are examples from your own schools. How are you using hallways, maybe creatively, now that you're one-to-one? Have you taken out some lockers and added some things like stand-up desks? Have you put in some charging stations? So down below in the comments for this video, I would love for people to either comment or maybe link to a picture. Tell us a little bit about what's happening in your school and how you're utilizing space now that maybe you don't have as many lockers as you would have had in the past. So I would love this to be kind of a collection point and get some ideas and further the discussion a little bit more on the video. Thanks for watching. That's going to be it today. You can always follow along with the show notes on our website, which is historygeekteacher.com. I also have my contact information there if you'd like to get in touch with me. Also, subscribe if you like the content. I'm trying to do a lot more consistent content, and we are actually up above 100 subscribers, so I'd like to keep that going, and I'd like to make this as interactive as possible. So go ahead and subscribe, like, and join the conversation. So until next time, remember, history is so much more than just a bunch of boring old dead guys. Until next time, bye.